Hi everybody and welcome to my video about Scotch single malt whiskies. In this beginner guide, we will go through all the legal terms and processes how the barley gonna turn into the most precious liquid on the entire world. Let's start it. I have been working in the hospitality industry for a decade now, and I can say that my very favorite spirit is the whiskey. However, it doesn't matter which side of the bar you are standing on, it must be part of the common knowledge. Whiskey is an elegant, definitely not a plug and play enjoyment. Most of the people don't like it at the first encounter, at least it's quite rare. In fact, you need to have quite a few sips before you can say that I like whiskey. On the other hand, it's very important how you start this process. If your first whiskey ever is a smoky whiskey from Islay, it's definitely not gonna be your favorite. However, let's get back to it a little bit later. First, let's clear some terms. In order to call a whiskey Scotch single malt, it needs to meet some criteria, which are all written in the United Kingdom Scotch Whisky Regulation 2009. First of all, it needs to be made of malted barley from Scotland. It needs to be fermented, distilled, aged and bottled in Scotland. It needs to be distilled in a copper pot still in a single distillery. The bottling ABV must be minimum 40%. And it needs to be aged in oak barrels at least for 3 years. Obviously, most of the distilleries are aging for much longer. Now we know the legal terms, but how they do it exactly? Please join me for a virtual tour. Let's go! You get the barley. Before you can start the fermentation, we need to go through some processes. In order to make alcohol, necessary to have sugar in our mash. The barley not yet has it, but it contains starches, which is a kind of sugar. But the molecules are too big for the yeast to deal with it, so we need to break them down to smaller ones. It's super easy, just need to add water to it until it will sprout and the starches are broken down to sugar. Now we are talking about barley malt, in the future just simply malt. The next step is to dry the malt we have. They lay the malt on a perforated floor and by blowing hot air underneath it, germination of barley is stopped, so the sugar is retained and ready to be used in the next step, mashing. In fact, traditionally, Islay distilleries are adding peat to it. The peat is a semi-carbonized vegetation, aka baby coal. When they are adding it to the process, they're gonna have a beautiful smoky peaty flavor at the end, what they are quite famous about. Now we need to dissolve the sugar in the grains in order to make alcohol. We achieve this with adding hot water to the malt and crushing it until we have a very sugary mash called wort. It's time to turn the sugar into alcohol with the fermentation process. We fill the wort into wooden or stainless steel vessels and adding yeast what turns the sugar into alcohol. By the end of the process we will have a mash with 6 to 8% ABV, which called wash. In the next step we transfer the wash into pot stills. They are traditionally made of copper and the sizes and shapes varies from one distillery to another. As the alcohol boils and vaporizes on a lower 78 Celsius degrees, ideally the temperature in the pot still is around that level. As the alcohol vapor rises up to the neck of the still, which often called swan neck because of the shape, it drives the vapor through a condenser which is chilled with cold water and the vapor condenses and becomes liquid again. After the first distillation we have a liquid with 21 to 30% ABV called low wine. In order to reach a higher alcohol level, the low wine needs to go through a second distillation. At this stage, the distillers need to pay higher attention as some toxic compounds are released in the beginning and at the end. Those parts widely known as head and tail, so we need to collect the noble part only, which known as heart or cut and has an ABV around 70%. It's time for maturation. As we said at the beginning, only oak is legally accepted as the only wood type to mature single malt Scotch whisky. 90% of the new make spirit nowadays is filled into ex-bourbon cask made from American white oak. This common practice is in place as the availability and cost of the bourbon cask is fairly low. However, many distilleries using ex-wine cask to mature and giving different flavor profile to the whiskey. The type of cask highly affects the whiskey, so need to choose wisely. Some distilleries are changing the cask during the maturation. For example, Glenmorangie has a range which is aged in bourbon cask for 10 years and then changed for sherry, port or southern cask for an additional 2 years. During the maturation, there is a natural loss of liquid which famously known as the angel's share, which comes from the romantic legend narrates of angels taking their share of whiskey. The next step is bottling, which starts with blending casks. Yes, single malt whiskies are blends of different casks of roughly the same age. The age on the label indicates the age of the youngest whiskey in the bottle. Usually at this stage they add purified water to bring the ABV down to 40%, but some whiskey is bottled on cask strength, which usually comes from a single cask. Now the whiskey is ready to be sent to the market. There are 5 different whiskey regions in Scotland with their own style. Lowland, Highland, Speyside, Campbelltown and Islay, which is famous about the smoky whiskies as we mentioned that before. For beginners, I'm always recommending to try something from Highland or Speyside with a longer maturation, because longer the maturation, smoother the finish is for the whiskey. And for last, the usual question about water and ice. It's absolutely normal to add a dash of water or a couple of ice cubes to your whiskey, especially when you are drinking cask strength whiskey, as it allows you to experience the release of aromas caused by the reaction. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to see more, please subscribe, and then you're gonna stay in loop when I'm releasing a new one. See you next time.